Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good evening to, well, a quite late night episode of the Matura Express. My name is Karina. Tonight's topic is environment. Okay, your introductions, or the brief insert that you saw a second ago, said that it's time for demonstration exams, which it isn't. There won't be any demonstration exams today. I'll talk you through some of the aspects of the topic of environment, namely the ones that you see here on my sheet. So that is tonight's topic. I'll give you some vocab because I personally think that environment is one of those topics where you need some specific terminology, some words that, well, that belong to the topic that you probably need, regardless of what aspect you then focus on in your exams. I'll then talk about global warming and about tourism and environment. So there is a connection between tourism and environmental pollution. And as we live in a tourist area, this might affect you and might also be like some specific aspect of the topic that you may be asked to talk about in your exams. Concerning the topic as such, I think that it's one of the nicest topics in the pool of like Matura topics that you have, especially because there's so much going on, there's so much discussion, debates going on about environment, about global warming. There is so much like real life examples that you could give. I suggest that you follow the news a little bit. I'll give you an example of something very recent when we get to like the point. Well, yeah, as I said, very nice topic. If I had to do my A-levels again, and if I had to wish for a topic, or if I could wish for a topic, I'd probably want this one simply because, well, yeah, as I said, even without studying the contents, you probably do know quite a bit about it because it's hard to, like one of those topics that is hard to avoid. Good. I will talk you through some vocab. As I said, the most central aspects, it's basically just like a list of nouns in this case, some verbs as well, that you need in order to be able to talk about the topic. The specific terminology, like the Fach vocabular kind of thing. Why is this on this page now? Well, anyway. I'll also try and point out some pitfalls that you might encounter, like regarding constructions, regarding types of words, and so on and so forth. Umweltschutz, pretty easy. Protection of the environment or environmental protection. And that is important, so you either have to put protection first, then work with a preposition and the article, protection of the environment, or you have to make it an adjective, environmental protection. We would not, like in my exams or in my experience, people sometimes try to simply put environment as a noun form and protection as a noun form, so environment protection as Umweltschutz, which doesn't work. So either protection of or environmental protection. Verschmutzung is pollution, that should be clear. People sometimes have troubles with the verb, so that pollution is the noun, is kind of, well, we all know that. To pollute, pollute, would be the verb, and polluted, the participle, and so on and so forth. Polluting exists as well. And there's different types of words, yeah, as I said, different types of words. Be careful about the verb. Klimawandel, climate change, one of the most frequently discussed concepts in, like, presently. So climate change, very good chance for you also to introduce or include some textbook or some knowledge that is not in the textbook. That was a complicated sentence. Some extra textbook knowledge. There's so much discussion going on about climate change. Some very, well, important politicians in current political landscape say that climate change does not exist, that it was an invention basically to, I don't know what, threaten the people, scare the people, I don't know. what his argument is. You probably know, like you've probably followed the whole discussion. So, well, yeah, there is people who still say climate change doesn't exist, but Meeresspiegel, sea level, simply on the sheet for the fact that some people still struggle with the Meer and the lake and the sea kind of thing, so be careful about that. Two very important words, erneuerbare Energien und fossile Brennstoffe. That is something that you probably can't avoid in the topic, especially when global warming is the focus of your exams. Erneuerbare Energien, renewable energies. It's more than one source of energy, so there's a lot. There's water power, wind power, geothermal energy, and so on and so forth. So it's energies in the plural if you use, like if you want to talk about all of them. Fossile Brennstoffe, so the stuff that is not renewable, the stuff that we should not use anymore, coal, oil, and so on and so forth. Gas is fossil fuels, also in the plural, but that is what they call. A word that people very often look for but can't find in their exams or can't retrieve or can't access that quickly is the English word for Lebensraum, habitat. Climate change, global warming does have an effect on the habitat of animals especially, so that's the word that you are looking for. Artensterben. Also a little tricky when it comes to like formation kind of thing. So it's extinction of species, that's the noun construction. And we sometimes have problems with the form of extinct. People would very likely say something like they get or they go extincted, which they don't. It is they go extinct, so no ed in this form. It's unchangeable, you can't alter the form in any way. So species go extinct, they become extinct, whatever. Species go extinct is probably the most like English, the most colloquial kind of thing. Abholzung, so if you cut down trees for whatever purposes, we're going to talk about that in a second. That's deforestation. To deforest as a verb exists as well. So large areas of land get deforested. In that case, we do have a past tense form. Deforestation is the noun. And the greenhouse effect as the last word, because that's kind of the links me to the topic as such. So we're gonna focus on global warming, one of the many aspects that environmental pollution takes, one of the many like faces that it has. I think it would be a very advisable thing for you to be able to define it. There is no one standard definition of global warming. You probably can do that from scratch as well, like you can probably wing it, but maybe you should have some, like vague idea of what it is. Sometimes you have to define terms, and it's quite, because your situation in the A levels is usually you are an expert on blah blah blah, and if you then get caught kind of not knowing the definition, that would be a very bad thing. So global warming is the increase of the average temperature on Earth. That is important. At the moment we measure like the fastest increase in recorded history, but that is just a side note. There are some people who say that global warming is a myth, that it has, like, there have always been hot summers, cold winters, whatever, but talking about heat, talking about the increase of the temperature, it is the average temperature that counts, so it's the measurements of a couple of years in a sequence basically, and regarding that we have like the highest increase in history. So you may want to add the average in your argumentation, because otherwise you could still be like, well, your interlocutors could still be, well, but there have always been blah blah blah. But it's about the average temperature. A definition of the greenhouse effect, I tried to put it as simply as I could. So what the greenhouse effect is, that's kind of a standing definition, that's kind of my standing definition, the way how I explain it to people if I teach the topic. It's greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide and other pollutants like dirt, things, exhaust fumes, and so on and so forth, that is collected in the atmosphere, and these particles, like the debris, like the dirt, basically absorb sunlight. The radiation would normally go into the atmosphere, but now there is a blanket, like all these particles, all this dirt caused by human beings is there. It's kind of a blanket, a layer, and so the sunlight and the heat can't go. And normally the radiation would go into space, where it would not be much of a problem. That's what it's been like for many years. But the pollutants, like the layer that I mentioned, they basically trap the carbon dioxide, the greenhouse gases, and the pollutants. They can't go out, they're stuck, kind of thing. And that is why it's getting hotter, the greenhouse effect, because the heat and sunlight can't go. So that is my definition. I'll quickly leave it for you to read through for a second. So it's all about heat that gets trapped because, well, as a blanket kind of thing. I hope my working definition works. I'm pretty sure that there's scientists out there who would disagree with the simplification of my explanation, but that's, well, talking about stuff that is too scientific, even though you may know about it, is maybe quite hard in the exams because, well, the more complicated it gets, the more easily you get confused, I suppose. Good. Causes for global warming. The picture should, well, the picture belongs to a different chapter. So much like the same thing every Monday. I complain about my own computer skills. Anyway, the causes for global warming are pretty straightforward, pretty easy. We all know that, we've heard it before. So it's mainly factories and like producers of something that burn fossil fuels. They are a very dirty way of like producing energy. Coal burns burns in a dirty way, kind of thing. So there's a lot of fumes produced. Same holds true for petrol and gas, of course. So that is the main pollutants in or for the environment. It's factories, industries of whatever type, but also humans, like in their private lives, basically, cause a lot of pollution simply for the fact that we use our cars very frequently. Also public transport, but then that's the more environmentally friendly alternative in any case. Airplanes, they are the biggest, or one of the biggest public transport or means of public transport, contribute a lot to pollution. Ships as well, I was told, which I didn't know, but anyway, so ships would be a problem for like, shipping back and forth food mainly, so I don't think the passenger ships are that much of a problem. And food production as such, you've probably seen pictures of of places where there is a lot of meat production going on, like this big pens where all the animals are in, I don't know, Texas for example, like the massive cattle farms, the massive slaughterhouses there. They emit a lot of pollutants, they also use up a lot of water, obviously meat production does. And well, the slaughterhouses and all the places where the meat gets cured, cured is the English word for, how do you say that in German, räuchern? So when like the whole process of meat processing is, like when it starts, there's obviously a lot of carbon dioxide produced. Same holds true for soy production, mainly in South America. There's this massive increase of soy products as they seem to be very popular at the moment. But for food production or for soy production, first of all, a lot of emissions are blown up into the air because there's a lot of tractors and vehicles and lorries and so on going back and like watering the whole thing. Also a lot of deforestation going on because they need big fields, like big spaces. So food production, factories and our means of transport, they are the main causes for global warming, or so people say. The effects are a little more interesting, I think. My great picture. The first and maybe most frequently discussed point at the moment is the extreme weather conditions. Scientists cannot really agree on whether or not global warming is the fact for all the hurricanes, all the well, hurricanes mainly, but also the, what are they called? Earthquakes. That's the word I was looking for. It's like, okay. Tornadoes, earthquakes, and hurricanes. Well, there's, like, scientists still haven't found any proof as such as to whether global warming is the cause, the reason for all those extreme weather conditions that we have been hearing of in the past years almost. But there is evidence that there is. Hurricane Katrina in 2005, so the big hurricane that destroyed huge parts of New Orleans in the States, has basically been the starting point for the scientific discussion. So when Hurricane Katrina destroyed 3/4 of the city, basically, I was there, so I've seen it. The whole scientific discussion started on whether or not it is the fact that temperatures are rising, if this could be like related. And there's been a good many hurricanes in the past couple of years that kind of, well, emphasize the point, basically. Because it's getting warmer on Earth, the glaciers are melting. That is something that is proven. A simple Google search gives you the compare and contrast pictures, like, you know, then and now. So comparing glaciers like 15 years ago, like in a quite limited time span, and what we have now, you'll see major differences. Like the ice is shrinking, it's like going back considerably, and you can definitely see that. So, well, there is predictions that at least for the glaciers in Austria, skiing will be impossible in, well, pretty soon. So we will definitely all kind of live to that point. So the melting glaciers are definitely a problem. The warmer it gets, the more the ice melts, the more the ice retreats. That's what I was looking for. That's how you put it. So the ice on the glacier retreats, sich zurückziehen. That's how you should put it in your exams. The sea levels are rising. You've heard that as well. Pessimistic people say that countries like Italy or the Netherlands will get problems because of rising sea levels and so on. So cities like Venice and some, you know, coastal places in the Netherlands are kind of in danger of like getting flooded. But apart from that, the point is quite self-explanatory, I think. Next one is maybe a bit harder. Because the climate is changing, and because animals don't really know where they are, like they go to places where the climate is nice and where the flora and the fauna suit their like tastes, I guess, at the end of the day. There is animals moving around. They leave their habitats and settle in other countries, in other areas, and that is a problem because the area and the animals that live there, like the original animals, they're not fit for like the invasion of the new species. There is illnesses introduced because of that, because the animals would bring certain kind of pests, certain kind of illnesses that would then affect the old, like the original animals, because they are not used to it. So new pests and invasive species is a problem. I don't think there is much of a problem in Austria, but it definitely is a problem in countries like South America, for example. There the animals would just move around in search for like climate that suits them and for vegetation that suits them. They don't really obey country borders, so they would just move around, roam the areas freely, then meet with other species they should not meet with, and so the illnesses would just, you know, move around. They would infect each other, basically. As I said, not so much of an issue in Australia, really. I haven't heard of any cases, but there's definitely countries where this is the case. Next one is quite, well, I guess you can then choose whether or not you want to talk about stuff like that in your exams. Obviously, like, I'm not a biologist, but obviously some animals changed their behavior or had to change their behavior because of global warming, especially, or that holds true especially for animals that live in cold areas, like whatever sort of animals that is. There is snowy areas in, like, I don't know, Australia, New Zealand, South America, and animals that would normally live in like colder places and also hunt there and try to like get their food there, they don't find any food anymore, so they have to go to the cities. And then in the cities they start to be a problem for the inhabitants and the animals that live in the cities, obviously, for farms and so on and so forth. So obviously animals have to change their behavior because they can't find any food sources anymore otherwise, because of global warming, because the whole environment changes basically. So they alter their behavior. Alter is another word for change. And, well, very frequently they come into cities as well because they know that there's food there, which then, first of all, is a clash between domestic animals and wild animals, and they're also dangerous for people, obviously. Disruption of natural habitats, that's basically the same point, really. It's always good when you can give examples. One of the most famous examples of global warming and of the effects of global warming is the Great Barrier Reef. That's my picture, actually. Where is it? So that's a phenomenon that is called coral bleaching. That happens, as I said, in the Great Barrier Reef, which is obviously more than just a media thing. A friend of mine is Australian, and he said that he can see hell of a lot of a difference from what it was like when he was a boy and when he went snorkeling or diving there. There was like a lot of difference. If the corals are bleached, there's some nutrients missing that animals who kind of live amongst the coral reefs or in the coral reefs, that they would need, so they move away. So the whole biodiversity in the sea is kind of changing. And of course also the beauty of the place, as you can see in my picture. So that's not a myth, even though Donald Trump says that the whole thing is a lie, but then, well. So natural habitats get disrupted, animals have to change their lifestyle, have to change their way of hunting, have to change their way of like hunting for food and stuff. Obviously also holds true for the migration of birds. They also now change their behavior because it's warmer and they would not leave anymore because they can find food longer, but then the winter is coming eventually, so then they starve. So that's a whole like range of problems. Well, on some people, but I'm not a doctor, that's the point that I know the least of. Some people say that allergies and illnesses like asthma are also increasing because, because of the changed conditions, because there's always more and more pollutants in the air and our bodies have already started to react to them. But as I said, might be something for you to look up because I'm not a doctor and that's just something that I heard, really. So that's the effects. A very brief overview. So weather conditions, melting glaciers, rising sea levels, invasive species, animals have to change their like patterns of behavior, and illnesses that we would not normally have. Good. And my last point, because that affects us a lot. Austria is a touristy place, regardless of where you live. There's tourists everywhere, so this is a thing. I think like tourism tourism is a topic in your A levels, and it is a topic that has a lot of pros as such, so tourism is a good thing for the regions. But when it comes to environment, it's basically only bad, really. Not everything, not all the points hold true for Austria. Some of them are more like universal, they hold true for all the places that have tourists. Some of them are very specific for certain regions. Water pollution, I think that's not so much of an issue here in Austria, because I think that our hotels and the big resorts that we have, that they use the same sewage system as every house and every household would use. so the water doesn't go into rivers or seas like unfiltered or anything. But that is definitely an issue in places like India and Africa. They are not equipped for masses of tourists, and especially Africa is like slowly but surely developing into a mass tourist country. The resorts are not equipped for that, so their sewage system, their Abwasser system, is not made for like thousands of tourists. So they would just let everything flow into the nearest river and into the sea at the end, like eventually. So water pollution is a massive problem, but not only, as I say, or maybe not only in developing countries, if you want to call them that, but also in other countries that have experienced the tourist boom and are not equipped for that. Malaysia, for example, or Bali, countries like that. Not so much of an issue in Austria, really. Land pollution definitely is an issue in Austria. Beaches get polluted, that was the word. As again, a simple Google search gives you the most beautiful beaches of the world, and there's plastic waste, plastic litter everywhere, all over the place. There's locals who engage into like actions like collecting the stuff, basically cleaning up after the tourists. Mountains get polluted as well on a large scale. For skiers, for example, like I see that quite frequently. I go skiing a lot, and people would always come up with a great idea to like drop their cigarettes and their water bottles and stuff just like off the chairlift, which is something that drives me insane. But well, also true for trekking tourists, for example. Obviously there's a lot of waste on the Himalaya, for example, where it's now like a mass tourist place kind of thing. Everyone whose level of fitness is good enough to climb it does it, but then they also leave a lot of litter there. Massive discussion going on the internet as well. People in Nepal are like continuing to complain about it. You could look that up, gives you a very good example, something to talk about. Plastic contamination, maybe the biggest problem. We all know that we produce way too much plastic, and a lot of the plastic ends up in the sea, in nature. Well, cars and traffic, obviously, so wherever there are a lot of tourists, there's also a lot of traffic, which then causes exhaust fumes, which then cause more greenhouse gases, and then I guess that's a vicious cycle in the end. But quite self-explanatory, quite obvious. And we also have to deforest a lot of wood for building hotels, for building golf courses, for building ski slopes, which is like something that is a topic in Austria, of course, but we have a lot of forest. It is even more of a topic in places like Africa, for example, where they have to cut down a lot of like vegetation for golf courses, and also in order to be able to create like artificial beaches and stuff. So we deforest or clean, it doesn't always have to be deforestation, but we clear a lot of land for like, infrastructure. Good. I think that was it. Was that it? Yeah, that was it. Well, I hope that I could give you some input on what to talk about in your exams. As I said, those of you, or the one of you who gets the topic environment, or two maybe, I think you're very lucky, and it's like quite easy topic. Look up some aspects on the internet, like Donald Trump's negation of climate change, for example. There was something going on the internet a couple of days ago, appeared on my Facebook page. Donald Trump obviously said that even though they left the Kyoto thing, so they are not part, oh no, not the Kyoto, well, yeah, Kyoto. Mm-hmm. And the Paris thing, they left everything, didn't they? Yeah. So America basically said we don't need any environment agreements, we don't need to sign any contracts that oblige us to reduce CO2 or anything. But a couple of days ago, he said that America is the cleanest country in the world, and that the air is the most pure air to breathe that you can possibly get. Judging by the comments that he got for that, a lot of Americans disagreed with him. So I guess that speaks for itself. If the people who live in the country don't find their air the most breathable one on the planet, he was basically justifying his move to like not care about the environment really. So I read it in the Time magazine, in the online version, so still there. Well, you could also, in order to show off your great like knowledge, you could also look up the whole, like the agreement thing. Is Austria part of any environment agreements? Is there anything, I think we're part of the agreement that says, well, we have to limit global warming until like a certain year in the future. I'd lie if I said that I know which year that is. Well, usually the countries are not doing very well. Or the countries hardly ever reach their climate goals. But well, might be worth looking that up. Yep, I think that was it. Any questions? Anything that I need to respond to?
So far, not.
Good. So, well, that was it, really. I leave you with the image of the burning earth, and, well, I wish you a good night. We don't see each other next Monday. It's Chris' turn next Monday. So, see you in a fortnight. Thank you very much, and good night.